A unique part of the conversation methodology is that it's not a decision-making space. What it is a sense-making and learning space.
It's not confrontational. People can have their views.
It's not too formal, it's just a relaxed way of, continuously learning.
This group has influenced me on how I've influenced the department, and policies have shifted.
We now are more willing to accept an opinion about, land management and so on from other people who we probably have not seen as players in that space before.
Here we've got demonstrably the council actively listening, actively taking notes, actively engaging.
I think we're on the cusp of something that's really important.
Where we get results is when the community empowers us to work with them, invites us into their community to work with them. The other way around doesn't work.
If we actually get
St Andrews is a rural township at the northern end of our shire. It's one that has a proud rural identity, but also is in really close proximity to urban Melbourne. Despite its experience of severe bushfire only 8 years ago, it remains one of the highest risk townships in the Shire and in the wider region. As such, it's a priority for Council to engage with the community around risk, whilst acknowledging that to a large extent St Andrews is still in a process of recovery. So the physical landscape that we have is coupled by a level of social complexity because of its fire history that means we have to be sensitive, respectful, but also bold about doing things differently.
Our emergency management planning arrangements are very much tied up with the work that's done with a lot of other organisations. So we've been in a situation where we've looked at what has happened, what we've learned from that, and how we build that into the way we improve things.
I think through Quentin, who is our community safety officer, he was keen on developing a project in which we could involve people from beyond the usual agencies associated with firefighting and response to fires and so on. So his theory was that we would probably get a whole lot better bushfire management scenario if we involved people beyond the initial agencies. So obviously meant looking at our wider community.
So what we started to look at is, what do we understand about those townships? What do we understand about the people living in the communities of Nillumbik? And we realised that there was a big gap in our understanding. And if we were going to be more effective working with community, we needed to better understand what the community was.
And Justin's initial response was he wanted to have a big public meeting. And I said, mate, you just don't want to do that, because having been in this process now for, I don't know, several years post 2009, public meetings only become a forum for the people who've got loud voices or agendas or whatever. The people you really want to talk to, you're never going to hear. You'd be far better off having a series of, taking my idea, having a smaller group of people and talking to them. And he said, well, all right, give me the names of 10 people.
And so that led to a number of meetings, some very informal, some quite formal, to a point where The St Andrews Conversations, as they came to be termed, which was a term that evolved from that process, and I'm pleased that those conversations are still going strongly.
And I can bring it back here, you know, and to council or
We're
whatever.
trying to do the 3 to 4 day week.
Or do we have to actually point it out and facilitate that connection?
You know, so there was all this, it's quite an awareness rate.
Everybody put in the newsletter should do your fire plan, where now I have a lot more relaxed approach myself.
A unique part of the conversation methodology is that it's not a decision-making space. What it is a sense-making and learning space, whereby gathering people with deliberately diverse views of the world, mental models and stakes in the topic or in the issue together in an environment where we're meeting as people before we're meeting as stakeholders, we can start to make sense and value how each person's interpretation of an issue actually contributes to a more holistic understanding. What that also enables us to do is go away and make better decisions in our day-to-day life.
That's one of the issues that I think we have to face in fire management, is how do we get people, A, to be tuned in at the appropriate time for them, and then to translate that into action concurrently almost, rather than leave it until the fire's bearing down on them when it's too late.
Those relationships that we've been able to build across the conversations group has meant that we now are more willing to accept an opinion about land management and so on from other people who we probably have not seen as players in that space before.
It's not confrontational. People can have their views, and it's great to actually listen to them. And I'm thinking, well, actually, yeah, I can see where you're coming from. And because I'm in so many different groups, I can just bring it in, you know, surreptitiously with no one actually knowing that I'm doing it. So I feel like I've influenced a lot of people in a very nice way, you know. Whereas if I talk about, you've got to go to this meeting and stuff, like no one wants to go, you know, and they're not interested. So because they've got other things to do and other commitments. So
I definitely would say conversations is an opportunity to kind of deviate from the structured writing a plan and leaving it at that. I feel like it's an ongoing process of learning. You're constantly thinking about the different challenges that might come in. You know, it's not too formal, it's just a relaxed way of, you know, continuously learning.
It's actually really interesting getting other people's perspectives, because we all lived our own truth in 2009, 2010, and it was a survival mode for a lot of us. And so being aware of how our experiences and what we experienced impacted on other people, it's a good thing to share and to come to an understanding.
As the school, we are one of 5 schools in the state that are considered in the upper cohort of bushfire, at-risk schools. And over the years that I've been here, I've had many conversations within the department on trying to get them to support me and understand my context. That really came together once I was part of the St Andrews conversation, because it gave me a different insight into the context of St Andrews within the wider community, and it gave me a different skill set. So through that, I've gone back into the department and had different conversations. This group has influenced me on how I've influenced the department, and policies have shifted around some of the emergency management practices and procedures for this school and the other 5 schools within the state who are in the same cohort.
There isn't a lot of, generally speaking, goodwill towards councils. And from my personal perspective, the pre and post fire event showed them up in a very poor light. But here we've got demonstrably the council, through its members, working collaboratively and collectively with the community, listening actively listening, actively taking notes, actively engaging, and not pushing.
I think if you're prepared to go into community, demonstrating a certain amount of vulnerability to that community, and that you want to do something about your own vulnerability, then you're much more likely to develop a trusting relationship where you can both work together to see where both of your vulnerabilities are.
The trust that I've seen grow in this process between myself as a DELWP representative, but not really as a DELWP representative, as Kathy, is something I haven't experienced. You know, I've presented on what we do in the conversations, I speak about them all the time, and I share information with individuals, and we look and talk about, you know, what being connected to the conversations may benefit other processes, so that we can actually connect like satellites about other things.
There are real tangible outcomes in the building of those levels of trust, the easier relationship I have with council now that means I can get things done, and that is something that I haven't seen prior to these conversations taking place.
You know, emergency management aspires to empower the community. I believe that that's been shown to be wrong, and that emergency management organisations, the emergency management sector, should be aspiring to be empowered by the community, because that's where we get results, is when the community empowers us to work with them, invites us into their community to work with them. The other way around doesn't work.
I think we're on the cusp of something that's really important, and that, you know, I feel a sense of responsibility, not just within the work we're doing together and with the community, but with helping people learn about the process.
You know, you can't tell people what to do, and you can plan, but there will always someone who will be left out there who hasn't got a plan. And I don't feel they're as forgotten now as they were previously, which I think is the most important thing. So.